Hello everyone, this is Land of Stories by Chris Kofer, published by Little Brown Press, chapter 17, where we left off. Alex and Connor were in the dwarf mines, all over here, being chased by the big bad wolf pack and Malcolm Claw. When they escaped through the other side of the mountain, I'm assuming over here somewhere, and then caught by Bobblewort and Eghorn, and knocked out. Then, when they came to, they were around here somewhere, because they had to go this way to get to the Troll and Goblin territory. This way is better. Troll and Goblin territory. When the big bad wolf pack caught up with them, thanks to Connor's brilliant thinking of using the cut on his arm to draw them near so they could smell the blood of Connor. Then they jumped into the Mermaid Bay. Yee, hopefully they survived. But we're leaving them right now to go back over here. Yes, I ripped my map out of my book. It's way easier. Back over here to the Dwarf Forest for this chapter that is called Goldilocks, Wanted, Dead or Alive. And I feel like I should put my hood up for this one. Goldilocks, wanted dead or alive. It was just before sundown, and the soldiers from the Corner Kingdom were hot on Goldilocks' trail. She had been spotted on the outskirts of the baker's village in the early afternoon and had been on the run ever since. A group of 20 men were right behind her and their horses. I don't think I need this yet. And their horses, determined to take her into custody by any means necessary. Luckily for her, Goldilocks had the fastest horse in all the kingdoms. Remember what the name was? Porridge. Porridge is the name of the horse. Come! Goldilocks' voice is, "Come on, Porridge!" Goldilocks said to her horse. "You can make it, girl! We're almost to the border!" They passed Rapunzel's tower and crossed into the dwarf forest, but the soldiers kept chasing her, and doing so, they were breaking the laws of the happily ever after assembly had enacted. But then again, Goldilocks had broken so many laws that she had lost count, so she doubted that the soldiers would experience any repercussions for it. Porridge had the advantage over the other horses since she knew the dwarf forest by heart. She and Goldilocks gained a lot of ground from knowing what was behind every tree and which paths led where. "Split up and behind her!" Goldilocks heard one of the soldiers say from behind her. Goldilocks could feel her horse getting tired. They had been running for hours, and she knew Porridge needed a break soon if they were going to stay on the run for any longer. They came across the abandoned barn and was partially hidden by trees. Goldilocks had often used this place to hide from anyone hot on her trail. "Porridge, I'm going to hide in here and wait it out," Goldilocks said to her loyal horse. "Find somewhere safe and rest. Meet me back here tomorrow at sunrise." Porridge nodded and galloped away. Goldilocks withdrew her sword and approached the barn. The door was off its hinges, and it looked like someone or something had been forced in its way in recently. Inside the barn was a disaster. Stacks of hay were knocked over. Stables were broken down into nothing but bits of broken wood. There was blood stains on the floors and walls, but thankfully whoever had caused this damage wasn't here anymore. Who do we guess it is? My guess is the big bad wolf pack. Goldilocks put away her sword. She wasn't intimidated by the barn in the slightest. She had seen much, much worse, had been through much, much worse, and had caused so much worse in her days on the run. She took off her long maroon coat and her sword, began unlacing her tall boots, getting ready to settle in for the night. Something colorful caught her eye. While she was doing so, a bright blue fabric was sticking out from the bottom of the haystack. Goldilocks pulled it out from underneath the haystack and examined it. It was a beautiful bright blue gown with a delicate stitching. It reminded Goldilocks of a dress she had owned when she was a little girl. It had been so long since the last time she had worn a dress. She discovered a mirror hanging in the barn wall. It was slightly tilted and had cracks at the bottom. She didn't like what she saw. Goldilocks was young, but she had aged so much since the last time she had seen her reflection so clearly. She was a grown woman now. Goldilocks put on the blue dress. She let her hair down and ruffled it up a bit. She wiped off all the dirt off her face with a handkerchief and looked in the mirror. Again, she stared at herself completely awestruck. She had forgotten how beautiful she could be. She only wished Jack could see her like this again. Such a... I need the hood now. Such a beauty. Such a waste, said a voice. In the blink of an eye, Goldilocks had retrieved her sword and extended it in front of her. Who's there? Goldilocks demanded, but she didn't see anybody else in the barn. If the world could only see you now as I see you. Goldilocks, a woman feared throughout all the kingdoms, standing in a dress, said the voice. Don't be a coward, show yourself, Goldilocks said. She turned back to the mirror, but didn't see her reflection. Another woman with a pale face and dark, hooded cloak was staring back at her. Hello, Goldilocks, the woman in the mirror said. You! Goldilocks said. There was only one woman in the world who could possibly have the ability to communicate from mirror to mirror. I know you! You're the queen everyone's looking for! Yes, the evil queen said. We're both women on the run. What do you want with me? Goldilocks said. Why do you assume I need something from you? The evil queen said. I have appeared to you simply to pass along some information I've recently acquired. Nice try, but I'm not some ditzy maiden you can con, Goldilocks said, getting closer to the mirror. Try giving me a poison apple and I'll shove it down your throat. No, of course not, the evil queen said, in a mocking tone. You're just poor little Goldilocks, a girl who was tricked into thinking she was on a date with a boy she loved and had been running from the law ever since. Goldilocks stepped back from the mirror. How do you know that? She said with intensity in her eyes. I know more about you than anyone, the evil queen said. I know that when you were a young girl, you received a handwritten letter from a young boy who loved named Jack. He asked you to meet him at a house a little way out of town and gave you instructions how to get there. You went to the house and waited for hours, but he never showed up. How do you know all this? Goldilocks asked. You became sleepy in that house, didn't you? The evil queen continued. So you decided to go to sleep in one of the beds and hoped you'd wake up to find him. But you didn't wake up to him, did you? You woke up to find 3 bears staring down at you, and they almost killed you. You barely escaped the house alive, but the bears pressed charges against you for breaking into their house, and being so young and scared, you ran. You ran and ran, have been running ever since. For years, you wondered how Jack could have done that to you, and how you could have framed you like that. And then, finally one night, you snuck into the Red Riding Hood kingdom and asked, but Jack told you he'd grown poor and illiterate. Illiterate means you can't read or write. He hadn't sent you a note because he never learned to write. Someone else did. Someone else framed you. Jack had been looking for you for years. He was devastated when you disappeared. He climbed a beanstalk looking for you. You two have been meeting covertly in the shadows for almost 10 years now. Who told you that? Goldilocks asked. Every person comes from a mountain of pain they wish you to keep hidden, the evil queen said. And I did my research on you, Goldilocks, and you and I aren't so different, except I know who wrote the letter. Goldilocks shook her head in disbelief. How could she know something about Goldilocks that Goldilocks had been trying to discover her entire life? And who might that be? Goldilocks asked. Red Riding Hood, of course, the evil queen said. What? Goldilocks said. She almost stopped breathing. It's true, the evil queen said. The young queen has a large mirror in her bedroom, and she talks in her sleep. You'd be appalled about the things she confesses in her nightmares. Goldilocks had to sit down. She didn't even feel human anymore. She felt like an entity made of pure anger. Red Riding Hood has always loved Jack, and you were standing in the way, the evil queen said. She was young when she wrote the letter. She had no idea what consequences would be. She thought you would have Leva broken hearted before the bears had even gotten home, and then Jack would be all hers. But she's had years and years of worth of opportunities to make things right, Goldilocks said. Her eyes were staring down at the ground, but she was blind with rage. She stood up, threw off the blue gown, and put on her own clothes, sword and all. What will you do now that you know the truth? The evil queen asked. I'm going to take Red on a trip, Goldilocks said, and she's not coming back. There's only one place where she can disappear forever, the evil queen said, and her reflection faded from the mirror. Goldilocks burst out of the barn and ran into the night, whistling for her horse. She was about to do exactly what the evil queen wanted, but more importantly, she was about to get her long overdue revenge. Until chapter 18. Eee.